The stars above Earth had always seemed quiet, bright, distant, and silent. But one morning, before the sun even rose, strange lights flickered in the sky. People in cities and villages pointed upward, whispering and asking questions. Something was out there, and it was not a satellite. High above Earth's atmosphere, 3 large alien ships floated without making a sound. Each one was shaped like a smooth silver triangle, glowing slightly as they hovered like frozen birds. These were Concorde scout vessels, sent by the Galactic Concorde, a group of ancient alien civilizations who had ruled the stars. For thousands of years, for the aliens, this mission was not serious. They had read Earth's request to join the Concorde, and they found it funny. Humans, they said, were still using basic rockets, still fighting among themselves, still learning how to live together. Many Concorde leaders joked about Earth's message during their meetings. A small, noisy planet wanted to sit among giants. But to follow the rules of the Concorde, they had to send scouts and review the request. So they chose 3 scout ships and sent them with little worry. They believed they would return quickly, laughing louder than before. Inside one of the ships, an alien named Zuron stood by the front window. His skin looked like dark glass, and he had 4 arms folded behind his back. He was tall and calm. Behind him, his crew watched Earth on their screens. "Look at that," one of them said, pointing to the blue oceans, still using fossil fuel, still relying on wheels. Zuron smiled gently. "Let them show us what they have. Maybe they'll entertain us." Far below, on Earth, a man named Bren walked through the desert alone. He had short black hair, rough skin from years of sun, and quiet eyes. He wore a plain jacket and boots. He didn't look like a hero, but he was not going for a walk. He was going home. Bren had once been an engineer for a deep science group in a government lab. Years ago, that lab had begun a strange project, one that most people thought was impossible. The project was called Holosun. Even the name didn't make sense to many, but the people working on it were different. They didn't try to copy the aliens. They didn't try to build bigger ships or faster engines. They wanted something else, something that didn't move through space, but changed how space was seen. Most of the world had forgotten about Holosun. The scientists had left. The funding had stopped. The lab had closed, but Bren had stayed. Not in the lab, but in the desert nearby, watching and waiting. He had always known this day would come. As the alien ships hovered above, a small gathering was set up by the United Nations. The Concorde had agreed to speak directly to Earth's leaders, not out of respect, but for amusement. So, under the open sky in a quiet part of the world, a clean white platform was built. Cameras stood around it. Military officers kept a watchful eye. Scientists and reporters sat in chairs, waiting nervously. The air began to shimmer. A golden light grew in front of the stage. Then, like water flowing backward, the light formed into the shape of Zuron. He stepped onto the platform with a calm expression. His voice, when it came, sounded like many voices speaking at once, but it was translated instantly into human languages. "Through the Concorde's tech, people of Earth," he said, spreading his arms, "we have heard your request. We have come to see what you wish to offer the galaxy." The humans clapped politely. Some smiled. Others looked confused. The translation was smooth, but the tone was strange, almost like a joke being told without laughing. A representative from Earth stepped forward. She spoke of peace, learning, and cooperation. She said humans wanted to grow, to share, to join others among the stars. She showed videos of Earth's art, science, music, and dreams. Zuron listened, his face unchanged. When the speech ended, Zuron tilted his head. "Very interesting," he said. "You are a young species. You have energy, fire, curiosity. That is clear." He paused and looked up at the sky. His ships above glowed softly. "But you are not ready." He added, "We will give you 1 week. Show us something worthy, or we shall return with our answer." The golden light wrapped around him again, and he vanished. The Earth representative stood still. The cameras turned off. The crowd slowly left. In the desert, Bren reached the edge of a dry, broken cliff. Below him, hidden between the rocks, was a narrow path leading down to a small door made of black stone. Most people would walk past it without seeing, but Bren knew. He walked down carefully. The door opened when he touched it. Inside, the air changed. The silence was deep. Lights blinked softly along the walls. A long hallway stretched ahead, ending in a wide round chamber. In the center stood something that looked like a ship, but not like anything Earth had built. It had no wings, no engines. Its shape seemed to shift when not directly looked at. It was smooth, dark, and warm like a quiet heart. This was Holosun. Bren stepped closer and placed his hand on the surface. A low hum filled the chamber. The walls glowed. The lights responded. Holosun had never been turned off. It had only been sleeping. Time to wake up, Bren whispered. A soft pulse ran through the air. Holosun responded, not with sound, but with feeling, like a thought touching another thought. It had waited long enough out above the Earth. The 3 alien ships remained in orbit inside them. The crew laughed about Earth's old satellites, about their slow progress, about their weak technology. They had no idea what was below the desert. They had no idea what was about to wake. High above Earth, the Concorde ships floated like silver stones in the sky. They moved slowly, not because they needed to, but because they wanted to show control. Inside the lead ship, Zuron sat on a tall chair, eyes focused on a glowing screen. His crew spoke in low voices. They were not worried. They were not careful. They were amused. One of the crew laughed and pointed to the screen. It showed Earth's news reports, calling the alien rival a great moment of hope. The Concorde found it funny. They had visited hundreds of planets, and none of them had ever sent a message like Earth. The humans had asked to join them as equals. Zuron leaned back in his chair. They are brave, he said calmly, or they do not understand who we are. Another officer replied. They still burn fuel to reach orbit. They still argue about borders. They want to sit at the same table as us, said a third voice. Perhaps we should bring them a chair made of plastic. The crew laughed again. For them, this mission was not about danger. It was about watching a small species try to stand tall in a room full of giants. They had come to observe, not to fight, and so far, they had seen nothing that impressed them. Down on Earth, the news traveled fast. The Concorde had given 1 week for a demonstration. Governments rushed to prepare something that might catch the aliens' interest. Some suggested a show of advanced science, others planned music or language. Some even talked about offering Earth's best thinkers for a direct meeting. But in the middle of all this noise, one man did not speak at all. Bren was deep underground. Inside the Holosun chamber, he walked slowly round the vessel, checking its surface, reading the small glowing lines that moved along its body. The Holosun was not a normal machine. It did not run on fuel or electricity. It was built using strange materials, some of which had never been found on Earth again. Its shape did not follow Earth's logic. Sometimes it seemed tall. Other times it looked wide. When seen from the corner of the eye, it seemed to shift like mist. Bren placed both hands on the side of the vessel. A soft hum passed through the floor. The lights dimmed, then brightened again. The Holosun was awake, and it had begun to think. Years ago, when the project first started, Bren had worked with a small team. They had wanted to build something new, not a weapon, but a window. A way to show others what it meant to be human, not through words or numbers, but through feeling, thought, and deep memory. When the project was closed, many believed it had failed, but Bren had stayed, watching over it in silence. He had always believed that its time would come. Now, that time had arrived, above Earth. Inside the Concorde ships, new signals were received. The humans had sent a digital message to the fleet. It included a request for a private demonstration. The location was not near any city. It was in a desert, a flat, empty place where nothing moved. Zuron raised an eyebrow. Strange choice, he said. Perhaps they are afraid we will laugh again. Should we accept? Asked a crew member. Zuron thought for a moment, then nodded. Yes, let them show us something. It may be dull, but it will complete the record. The next day, a silver beam from the lead ship reached down to the desert floor. In the middle of dry sand and broken rock, a circle of light appeared. From this light, Zoran stepped forward once again. He looked around. No buildings, no cameras, no crowd, only the wind. Then, he saw one man standing nearby. Bren stood still, his face calm. His jacket flapped in the wind. Behind him, the sand looked normal. But Zoran noticed something strange. The air behind the man shimmered. Not like heat, not like smoke. It shimmered like thought. "You invited us," Zoran said, stepping closer. "Is this the best you can offer?" Bren said nothing. He simply raised his hand and pointed to the empty space behind him. At first, Zoran saw nothing. Then, slowly, the hollow sun appeared. Not like a ship rising from the ground, but like a shadow becoming real. It stood tall, smooth, and quiet. Its surface moved gently, like waves under glass. Zoran frowned. He scanned it with his wrist device. The results came back blank. No fuel, no engine, no data. "Is it alive?" one of the crew asked through the communicator. "I do not know," Zoran replied. The hollow sun did not speak. It did not move, but something inside it shifted. A soft ring passed through the air. Zoran stepped back. For a moment, the sky above flickered. The ships in orbit blinked on the screen. One Concorde officer grabbed his head and whispered something about stars falling inwards. Another shouted that he had seen a memory that was not his. Zoran's eyes narrowed. He turned to Bren. "What is this?" Bren answered, "This is us." The hollow sun pulsed again. This time, it touched not the air, but the mind. Zoran felt images in his head, not pictures, but emotions. The hope of a child drawing stars on paper. The pain of a soldier watching the sky during war. The joy of a mother holding her baby for the first time. The anger of a poet whose voice was never heard. The dreams of people who had nothing, yet imagined everything. Zoran stumbled back. "This is not technology," he whispered. "This is madness." Bren stayed silent. In orbit. The Concorde ships began to shake, not from impact, but from confusion. Their systems started showing false readings. Maps twisted, time slipped. One ship thought it was near a black hole. Another showed its crew as being part of Earth's soil. Voices from deep memory filled their halls. The hollow sun had done nothing violent. It had simply revealed it had opened a door inside the minds of the Concorde, showing them what it meant to be human not just in science, but in soul. Zoran fell to one knee, his hands gripping the sand. "What are you?" he asked. Bren stepped forward. His voice was calm. "We are not what you expected. We are not what we seem. But we are ready." Behind him, the hollow sun stood still. But the world would never be the same. Silence had returned to the desert, but it was no longer peaceful. It was heavy, like a held breath before a storm. The hollow sun stood in the same place, silent and still. Yet its presence changed everything around it. The air was no longer just wind and dust. It was filled with tension. Even though it made no sound, even though it did not move, it felt alive. Bren stood in front of it. His hands were behind his back. He watched the sky, knowing the Concorde ships above were watching. Somewhere up there, Zoran was speaking to his crew in quick, serious words. The Concorde had stopped laughing. Inside the lead ship, the crew gathered in the control room. The images on their screens kept flickering. Their sensors were confused. They could not tell if the hollow sun was hot or cold, small or large, metal or energy. Every time they ran a scan, the answers changed. "Send another probe," Zoran ordered. A small drone flew down toward the hollow sun. It hovered above the desert floor and moved slowly. As it got closer to the vessel, its signal became weak. The video feed showed strange shapes, like shadows dancing on the surface of the vessel. Then the drone spun in circles and shut down. One of the Concorde officers spoke in a quiet voice. That was not interference. The drone remembered something that never happened. Zoran did not reply. He stared at the screen. His face was calm, but his fingers were gripping the edge of the table tightly. "This is not normal," he said. No weapon behaves like this? A younger officer asked. Do you think it's alive? Zuron slowly shook his head. No, I think it is something else, something made to be seen. Not touched, not measured, only seen. Down on Earth, Bren walked around the hollow sun. He placed one hand gently on its surface. A low pulse moved. Through the ground, the vessel responded to his touch, not with light or sound, but with understanding. Bren had been part of the original team that helped build it back then. They were working in secret, not because they wanted power, but because they were afraid others would try to turn it into a weapon. Hollow Sun was never meant to destroy. It was meant to reveal. It had been built using rare materials found deep beneath the earth. But that was only the outside. The inside of the vessel was built from human thoughts, memories, emotions, dreams. The team had developed a way to record not just knowledge, but feeling. They placed those feelings into the vessel like seeds in soil. Hollow Sun had been quiet for many years, but now it was awake. Bren whispered to it. They came to laugh. Show them why they should listen instead. The vessel did not speak, but something began to change in the air. Above the desert, the light shimmered like water. The sky grew darker, even though it was still midday. In the Concorde ships, alarms started to beep. The stars outside the windows looked wrong. They were bending, like reflections in a broken mirror. One Concorde pilot shouted, "Our star map just moved. Earth is now in 3 places at once." Another voice said, "We're receiving transmissions, but they are not coming from Earth. They are coming from us, from our own future." The crew began to panic. Their eyes widened. Some covered their ears even though there was no sound. Zuron stood quickly and ordered all outside communication to be stopped. Shut down the feeds. Hollow Sun is not attacking. It is showing us things. It is using our own minds to speak. He turned to the screen again. This time, the image of the vessel looked different. Not because it had changed, but because they were seeing it differently. In that moment, Zuron saw a memory that was not his. He saw a small Earth child sitting on a floor, building stars out of paper. The child smiled, not knowing anything about war or empires or power, just wonder. Then the image changed. He saw an old man looking at the sky with tired eyes. He saw a mother holding her baby. He saw a writer tearing up a book after no one would read it. He saw a soldier giving his last breath for peace. All these things rushed into his mind, not like a story, but like truth. He dropped to his knees. Make it stop. Someone whispered behind him. Zuron shook his head. No, this is their message. Back in the desert, Bren looked up. He knew the aliens were beginning to understand. Not everything, just a little. But that was enough. Hollow Sun had no weapons, no shields, no engines. It only had memory. But memory was stronger than any fire. A bright ring of light formed around the vessel. It stretched upward like a tower of glass. Inside the ring, images danced, not in one language, but in many. Not just sound, but feeling. The Concorde ships stopped moving. They were not damaged, but their pilots could no longer control them. Their minds were filled with thoughts that were not their own. A voice came through the silence, not from Hollow Sun, not from Bren, but from the thoughts of every human who had ever looked up at the stars and dared to dream. We are not machines. We are not programs. We are not parts of your empire. We are human, and we are ready to be seen. The voice faded. The light returned to normal. The stars above went back to their proper places. The Hollow Sun became still again. In orbit, the Concorde ships slowly regained control. The systems were confused but not broken. The crew members were shaken but awake. Zuron stood once more. He walked to the front window and looked down at Earth. His face had changed, not with fear, but with something else. Respect. Double quotes. They do not seek war, he said. They seek understanding, and they have given us more than we expected. A long silence followed. Then he added, tell the others, the humans are not to be mocked again. Back on the ground, Bren sat beside the vessel. He closed his eyes and let the desert wind move past him. The Hollow Sun had spoken in its own way, and now The galaxy would never forget. The desert had returned to silence, but it was not the same silence as before. It felt deeper now, like the world itself was holding its breath. The hollow sun stood still, casting no shadow, making no sound. It had shown the Concord a glimpse of something they did not expect. It had not threatened them, it had not moved toward them, but it had touched their thoughts. It had filled their minds with feelings they could not explain. Some called it memory, others called it truth. Bren stood quietly beside the vessel. His face was calm, his eyes were sharp. He looked at the sky as if waiting for something more. He knew this was only the beginning. The Concord would not leave without answers, and he was right. Above Earth, inside the lead ship, Zuron sat alone in the command room. The lights were dim. His crew was resting in silence. Some were still trying to understand what they had seen. Others avoided speaking altogether. It was not fear they felt. It was something deeper, something closer to respect, or perhaps confusion. Zuron looked at the screen in front of him. It showed Earth's surface, and in the center of it, the hollow sun. His eyes narrowed. His fingers tapped the table. "Prepare the min shell," he said suddenly. One of the officers looked up, confused. "Sir?" "The min shell," Zuron repeated. "If this thing works through the mind, we must protect our thoughts. We must test how far its reach goes." The crew obeyed. They activated the min shell, an old Concord device made to shield the brain from strong signals or illusions. It had not been used for many years. Most thought it was no longer needed. Soon, a silver ring appeared around each crew member's head. It glowed softly, guarding their thoughts. Then they sent a second scout ship toward Earth, this time fully protected. The small ship flew silently through the atmosphere. It landed near the hollow sun, on the edge of the desert. From the ship stepped a single figure, another Concord being, tall and thin, wearing a full suit of armor and a min shell helmet. The armor was smooth and gray, showing no face. The being walked slowly toward Bren. Bren saw the figure and waited. He did not raise a hand. He did not step back. He simply watched. The armored figure stopped a few meters away and raised a small device. It began recording everything: light, air, temperature, sound, but nothing changed. The hollow sun remained quiet. Then the figure turned on a deeper scan. It reached into the vessel with invisible waves. The screen showed nothing useful. Lines appeared, but they twisted and moved without pattern. The figure added more power to the scan. Suddenly, the air shifted. The hollow sun did not glow, but something invisible began to move. A soft pressure filled the space between the two. It was not loud, it was not fast, but it was strong. Inside the figure's helmet, the min shell began to vibrate. The screen blinked. A soft sound, like humming, filled the ears of the pilot. Then, a memory appeared. It was not his own. He saw a small human house, made of wood. Inside, a child was drawing stars on the wall with colored chalk. The child laughed and looked out the window. Above the house was a night sky, full of bright stars. The child pointed and whispered, "I want to go there." The figure stepped back, shocked. He checked his helmet. The min shell was still active. But the memory had entered anyway. Another memory came. This time, it was the feeling of falling. Not through air, but through time. The pilot saw himself as a human man in a quiet city, sitting on a bench, watching people walk past. He felt old. He felt tired. But he also felt proud. He had done something great, and now he was resting. But he didn't know what that great thing was. The armored figure fell to one knee. He tried to shut off the scanner, but the screen showed only words he could not read. Human words, not written, but felt. He stood and looked at Bren. "What is this?" he asked through the communicator. Bren answered softly, "This is our vessel. It is not made to fight. It is made to show. You came with machines." We answered, "With the mind." The figure slowly returned to the scout ship and flew back to the main fleet. Inside the Concord ship, Zuron listened carefully to the report. He stood still, thinking for a long time. Then he turned to his crew. "We were wrong," he said. He walked to the center of the room. We thought they were weak because their ships are slow, because their science is young. But they have done something none of us has done." He pointed to the screen showing the hollow sun. "They built something from feeling, from history, from soul. We cannot scan it. We cannot block it, because it is not technology. It is a mirror. And when we look at it, we see not them, but ourselves." His words fell into silence. Then one of the officers spoke. "What do we do now?" Zuron looked out the window toward Earth. "We listen." Back in the desert, Brent sat on a rock near the hollow sun. The sky above him was clear. The stars would appear soon. He had not heard from any human leaders, but he did not need to. This was not for them. This was for the ones above. He looked at the vessel. It gave no light now, no sound, but he could feel its quiet power. He smiled. "They wanted a demonstration," he said softly. "Now they have won." That night, across the galaxy, Concord, ships sent silent messages to their homeworlds. No one spoke of invasion. No one laughed. They only sent one word: "Observe." The message from the Lee Concord ship flew across the stars like a silent wind. The word was clear: observe. For the first time in many cycles, the Council of the Great Empire paused their endless debates. The Great Hall, filled with thousands of delegates from countless worlds, grew quiet. The hum of voices dropped to whispers. Everyone knew the message came from Zuron, the commander of the fleet near Earth, the council elder. A tall being with silver skin and deep-set eyes stood. Slowly, he spoke in a voice that carried weight across the chamber. "Humans have changed everything." Some delegates laughed nervously. Others whispered in disbelief. "Changed how?" asked a voice from the back. "They have no strong weapons. Their ships are slow. Their science is simple." The elder's eyes did not waver. "They have built a vessel that does not fight with fire or metal. A vessel that speaks with memory, with feeling. Our own minds were touched by it." He paused. "We sent spies. They returned shaken. Our strongest minds were confused by what they saw." A younger delegate stepped forward. "If humans can do this, what else can they do? Are they ready to fight if needed?" The elder smiled softly. "They do not need to fight. Their strength is an understanding. Their weapon is truth." A murmur spread through the hall. Some were still doubtful. Others were curious. "Commander Zuron," the elder said, "you will speak to the council now. Tell us what you have seen." The room darkened. A large screen lit up. Zuron appeared. Calm but serious, he began to speak in the common language. "Honored members of the council, I have watched the humans and their vessel closely. They do not hide weapons behind their silence. Their technology is not made for destruction, but for connection." He showed images from his ship's sensors, images of the hollow sun, the desert, the strange memories that had invaded their minds. The hollow sun reached into our thoughts. It shared with us the hopes and fears of an entire species. It made us see our own weakness and strength reflected back at us. Zuron's voice grew stronger. "We cannot defeat such power with guns or shields. We must learn from it. We must listen." The elder nodded. "What do you recommend?" Zuron's eyes met the camera. "We must offer peace. We must invite them to join the council, to teach us their ways." The chamber erupted in debate. Some voices cried for war, calling humans weak and dangerous. Others called for respect, believing this was a new path. The elder raised his hand. "Silence." He spoke clearly. "We will send an envoy to Earth, a group of our best diplomats and scholars. They will carry no weapons. They will come with open hands and open minds." The decision was made. Far below, on Earth, Bren watched the night sky. The stars shone bright and clear. He knew the Concord fleet would not leave yet. They were waiting for something, or someone. A small ship descended quietly near the hollow sun. Its surface reflected the stars. It opened, and out came three figures. They were not soldiers. They wore simple robes and carried no weapons. Bren stepped forward to meet them. The tallest figure smiled kindly. "We come in peace," she said in the common tongue. Bren nodded. "Welcome to Earth." The three envoys looked around. They saw the vast desert, the quiet vessel, and a man who carried the weight of a secret older than most stars. We have much to learn," the woman said, "and much to share together." They sat beneath the stars. Words flowed slowly at first, then faster. They spoke of history, of dreams, of fears. They shared stories and listened carefully. The hollow sun glowed softly beside them, a silent witness to this new chapter. Days passed. The envoys studied the vessel. They asked Bren many questions. They did not rush. They understood that this was not just science or technology. It was a new language, one of heart and mind. One night, the woman from the envoys approached Bren. "Your people have shown us a power we did not expect, not in weapons or war, but in spirit." Bren smiled. "That power is what makes us human." She nodded. "If the council agrees, we will work together to protect, to learn, and to grow." The hollow sun pulsed gently, as if it agreed. But beyond the stars, in darker corners of the galaxy, not everyone welcomed this change. Some fleets prepared quietly. Some leaders whispered words of warning. The universe was vast, and not all were ready to accept a new power. For now, Earth was safe. But the true test of peace was still to come. The days grew longer as the envoys stayed on Earth. They learned the ways of the humans and watched the hollow sun closely. Their respect for the vessel and its creator, Bren, grew with every passing moment, but not all among the Concord fleet. "We're at peace." Some whispered that this new understanding was a weakness. Others feared that humans were hiding something deeper, something dangerous. Zuron knew these fears were real. He saw the unrest growing among his officers. Some wanted to strike before humans could use their strange power against them. Others hoped for peace but feared betrayal. One evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, Zuron called a meeting. The room was filled with tension. "We cannot ignore what we have learned," he said. "The hollow sun is more than a vessel. It is a mind that reaches out and touches ours." A grizzled officer spoke up. "But can we trust it? Can we trust them?" Zuron met his gaze firmly. "We must test it. We must understand it fully before we decide." He turned to his closest advisors. "Prepare the neural link." The neural link was a device that connected the minds of two beings, allowing them to share thoughts, feelings, and memories directly. It was dangerous. It could break the mind if used wrongly. But it was the best way to know the truth. The envoys agreed to the test. They understood the risk. Bren volunteered to be the first human to connect with the Concord mind, the neural link. Chamber was a small room filled with soft light. Two chairs faced each other. Wires and sensors hung like vines from the ceiling. Bren sat quietly in one chair. The lead envoy sat opposite him, wearing the Minshell helmet to protect her mind slowly. The neural link was activated. A gentle hum filled the room. The air grew thick with energy. At first, nothing happened. Then, images began to flow between the two minds. Bren saw the galaxy through the envoy's eyes, worlds of shining cities, endless oceans, and strange creatures. The envoy saw Earth, its deserts, forests, and cities filled with life and noise. But soon, the connection deepened. Feelings poured in like waves: fear, hope, joy, and pain. Memories not just seen but felt. The envoy gasped. She saw her own childhood, but through Bren's eyes. She felt his struggles, his dreams, and his loneliness. Bren saw the envoy's past, wars and losses. He felt the heavy weight of responsibility she carried as a leader. Both were changed by the connection. When it ended, the room was silent. The envoy spoke first. "Your people have endured much. Your strength is born of pain and hope." Bren nodded. "And yours is born of duty and fear." Outside the chamber, the Concord officers watched anxiously. Zuron smiled slightly. This is the first step. But the test was not over. Next, the envoy shared with Bren a vision of the council. She showed him the halls filled with beings from many worlds, debating their future. She showed the fear of some leaders and the hope of others. Bren realized the path ahead was difficult. Trust would not come easily. Meanwhile, among the Concord fleet, not all were pleased. A small group of commanders met in secret. They spoke of action, of taking the hollow sun by force. of ending the human threat before it grew, but their plans were interrupted by a sudden message. Zuron's voice came through the comms. "Hold your fire. We must finish the tests." The commanders grumbled but obeyed for now. Back on Earth, the envoys prepared for the final test. They would connect their minds directly with the hollow sun itself. Bren stood beside the vessel, watching the soft light pulse gently. "This will be the greatest risk," he said, "but also the greatest chance for peace." The envoys entered the vessel carefully. The hollow sun's surface shifted under their hands. It welcomed them like an old friend. Inside, the air was warm and quiet. The walls seemed alive with soft light. The neural link devices were placed carefully on the envoys' helmets. Bren watched as they connected. A calm silence filled the room. Then, suddenly, the vessel's light grew brighter. The envoys' minds were pulled into a vast space of memories and emotions. They saw the story of humanity, its joys and sorrows, its triumphs and failures. They felt the love of families, the pain of loss, the courage of explorers. One envoy gasped as she felt the fear of the first humans stepping into the unknown. Alone in the darkness, another smiled as she saw the hope that never died, even in the darkest times. But there was more. The hollow sun showed the envoys the future. A future where humans and the Concord stood together, sharing knowledge and strength. A future where fear was replaced by trust. When the link ended, the envoys were changed. They looked at Bren with new respect. "We see now," the lead envoy said. "The hollow sun is not a weapon. It is a bridge." Zuron entered the room. "Then, it is time." Time for what? Bren wondered. Time to show the galaxy what it means to be human. The day had come when the humans and the Concord would take their first true step together. The great hall of the council was filled once again. This time, the mood was different. It was not filled with doubt or fear. It was filled with hope. Zuron stood before the council, but this time, he was not alone. Beside him stood Bren and the three envoys who had come to Earth. The hollow sun rested safely in orbit around the planet, a silent symbol of a new beginning. The elder's voice echoed through the hall. "Today, we witness not just the meeting of two peoples, but the birth of a new path for the galaxy." Bren stepped forward. His voice was steady and calm as he spoke to the many faces watching him for many cycles. "Humans live with fear and hope. We reached out into the stars, not with weapons, but with hearts open." He looked at the council. "The hollow sun is our story, our history, and our promise. It is not a tool for war, but a mirror that reflects what is true inside us all." The room grew silent. Even the most skeptical delegates listened carefully. The lead envoy spoke next. "We came expecting to find a weak race. Instead, we found strength we could not measure with weapons. We found a mind that breaks barriers and builds bridges." Zuron nodded. "This is the power that will change the galaxy. Not destruction, but understanding." The council elder raised his hand. "We accept the humans as members of the council. We will learn from them and teach them. Together, we will build a future where no mind is broken, but all minds grow stronger." Cheers and applause filled the hall. But peace did not come without challenge. Outside the council, some factions still plotted. They saw the humans as a threat to the old order. Their ships prepared for war. Bren knew this was only the start, but he also knew humanity was ready. The hollow sun was no longer hidden. It was a symbol of hope for many. A few days later, Bren and the envoys returned to Earth. The sky was clear and blue. The sun shone warmly on the desert where the vessel waited. "We have made history," Bren said softly. "But the real work begins now." The envoys nodded. "We will stand with you as friends and allies." Together, they began plans for new voyages, missions to share knowledge and explore the stars side by side. Back on the Concord ships, the commanders who had doubted now saw the value in unity. They joined the efforts to build new bridges between worlds. The galaxy was vast and full of mysteries. But now, with humans and the Concord working together, the future looked bright. And in the quiet of the desert, the hollow sun pulsed gently. A heartbeat in the vastness of space. It was a reminder that strength comes not just from power, but from understanding. And that sometimes the greatest weapon is a mind willing to reach out with hope.